councillors, senior staff members, members of the public in the gallery. Also like to welcome each and every one of you, particularly those that are doing presentations for us this evening. But also would like to welcome online the people who are watching this on live streaming. Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, we do have quite a big program tonight. We'll be working through the first part of our agenda, which is protocol, and then we'll be taking some deputations, and then following on from that we'll go into dealing with the actual council agenda, which is reasonably significant this evening. And so I'd just ask your forbearance as we move through the first part of it, and then we go to into the presentations, which I think will be very valuable to us this evening. So we commenced the meeting with the acknowledgement of country. The Shire of Esperance acknowledges the Kepikal Wurundjeri people of the Noongar Nation and the Naju people who are the traditional custodians of this land, their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and we extend that respect to other Aboriginal Australians today. We now go to attendance. We have Councillor McMullen away this evening. He's an apology, away with leave of absence, and all other councillors and senior staff members are in attendance. I'd just like to acknowledge Mr. Roy Greaves, our new Director of External Services. This is his first council meeting with the Shire of Esperance, and we welcome you along, and we welcome you for many years to come, Roy, and being part of this team. Councillors, that's covered the attendance and the apologies. We have, do we have any apologies and a notification of granted leave of absence? It's only Councillor McMullen, correct? Any councillors seeking leave of absence? Councillor De Haas.
I would just like to seek leave of absence for the 1st of April to the 4th of April.
Thank you. Any other councillors seeking leave of absence? Neil, someone move that we grant Councillor De Haas leave. Moved by Councillor Oborne, seconded by Councillor O'Donnell. I'll put to the vote those in favour, please show. Against, that is carried 8 votes to nil. We then move on to item 4 in our agenda, which is the application. Oh, sorry, that was item 4. Item 5 is the announcement by the person presiding without discussion. Well, I've made my statements. So we go to item 6, is the declarations of financial interests. As the first item, councillors. Any councillors declaring financial interests? Councillor De Haas.
Declare a financial interest in 12.1.3, the development application carport lot 4564 Moreton Way, Nelson, as I'm an owner of the property.
Thank you. Is there any other declarations of financial interests? Councillor, sorry, my apologies, I do. Mrs. Baxter, please.
Yes, through you, Chair. I'd like to declare an interest in item 12.3.3 HR Staff Entitlements Policy Amendment, as my husband works at the Bay of Isles Leisure Centre.
Thank you. CEO, Mr. Shane Burge.
Yeah, I'd like to declare an interest in item 12.3.3 HR Staff Entitlements, as my wife works at the Bay of Isles Leisure Centre.
Thank you. Is there any other declarations of financial interests? Councillors, I need to declare a financial interest in item 12.1.2, the amendment to the structure plan, Myrup Fly-in Estate. Any other financial interests? And declarations of proximity interest. Councillor Oborne.
I need to declare a proximity interest in item 17.1, purchase of staff house.
Thank you. Any other declarations of proximity interests? Neil, we go to declarations of impartiality interests. Any declarations, councillors? Councillor, first is Councillor De Haas.
I'd like to declare an impartiality interest in item number 8, the public addresses and deputations, as I'm actually a member of one of the groups that is presenting.
Thank you. Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to disclose a impartiality interest in item 12.1.6 as the proponent and I are both a member of the same rural bushfire brigade.
Are there any other declarations of impartiality interests? If not, we go to public question time. This is the opportunity for members of the public to ask any question they might like of council at this stage. Anyone wishing to ask questions of council? If not, it is my normal practice to offer at the conclusion of the meeting an opportunity for public question times, but we'll move on now. We go to public addresses and deputations, and the first one listed is the Esperance Professional Fishermen's Association, Mr. David Gray. David is with us online, is he? Okay, look, while we're sorting that one out, I'll move on then. The Deep Sea Angling Club, Mr. Murray Johnson and Miss Karina Worth, they are here with us, I believe. And I invite you to come forward to the microphone there, both of you, and you're welcome. Okay, he's going to do it. Okay, thank you. Just talk into it, Karina.
Okay, thank you. My name is Karina Worth. I'm the current president for the not-for-profit organisation Esperance Deep Sea Angling Club that is situated on Door Drive, Bandy Creek. Our establishment in 1988 saw a small group of people that had recreational boat fishing in common and wanted to provide a regular opportunity for the community to get together. Our current membership is 120 plus families, with many of our members interested in both land-based and boat fishing. We recently hosted our 30th annual Esperance Archipelago Offshore Angling Classic with 85 recreational boats consisting of 285 anglers attending. These participants travelled from the Goldfields, Wheatbelt, Great Southern, Southwest and the occasional Eastern States visitor attends. Around 600 people attend our fish weigh-in presentation. In terms of competitors, our classic rivals the state's biggest fishing competition, GameX, in Exmouth. This year alone, our club grossed $140,000 from the event, with locals and visitors injecting a conservative $500,000 direct expenditure into the local economy, with economic multiplier far in excess of the $500,000. Our club community involvement includes an ongoing rock bolt safety program, providing safe anchor points for rock fishing along our coastline, which was implemented many years ago. Placement of an artificial reef between Esperance and Cape Le Grand for inclusive safe fishing for smaller vessels, all in conjunction with Wreckfish West. And more recently, obtaining funding for a floating jetty pontoon inside Bandy Creek Boat Harbour for safe access for all abilities, including wheelchairs and the like, to recreational vessels, which has been stonewalled by red tape within the Department for Planning and Infrastructure. Fishers living within the boundary of the Goldfields Esperance Development Commission spend around $150 million on their fishing passion every year, with much of that spent in Esperance. Keeping access to our coastline open for many like-minded community members to enjoy, which fishing has proven to assist with mental well-being, we feel the health benefits are very important to the South Coast area. As you may or may not be aware, the proposed South Coast Marine Park, which began development in 2021, covers a significant proportion of our southern coastline, spanning from east of Bremer Bay to the WA-SA border past Eucla. This encompasses many areas which are highly valued by our club and its members. The Research Archipelago directly off Esperance and Cape Legrand contains some of our most valued fishing areas given their proximity to town and protection from the harsh conditions of the Southern Ocean. Since the announcement, our club has held grave concerns about how the proposed marine park will impact on recreational fishing in Esperance and in turn our club and way of life. Our club and its members have accordingly been active participants in the marine park planning process, ensuring that marine park planners have a clear understanding of what is utmost importance for our recreational fishing and our club. We have also worked closely with RecFish West and the Recreational Fishing Sector Advisory Group to provide detailed information on which areas are highly valued to us, which has been provided to marine park planners through Community Reference Committee meetings. Unfortunately, engaging through the marine park planning process, it has not instilled confidence that our values and concerns are being given due consideration. As of the time of writing, there are multiple areas which are identified as candidate areas for sanctuary zones. Many of these candidate areas are located in areas which are highly utilised and valued by our members and other recreational fishers in Esperance. If the marine park continues to progress in the current direction it is taking, we fear that there will be irreparable damage to recreational fishing in Esperance and surrounds, with flow-on effects to the fishing clubs, tourism, local businesses and the social fabric of our town. This may be further compounded by other marine park zones which have little information on whether recreational fishing will be allowed and are yet to be identified. The government representative stated in Parliament that it had carried out an economic and social impact assessment for each of the regional communities affected by the proposed marine park, including Esperance, yet have chosen not to release this information. What are they hiding? The Shire are entitled to understand the impact a marine park would have on their community. Fisheries Department findings for the year 2020-21 regards the area in question accounts for 0.7% of total boat-based catches of recreational fish in WA, and on average, boat-based fishers take less than a kilogram of fish for every square kilometre of the marine park. This is how little effect and how big an area we are talking about. Is the social and economic impact of the park and the no fishing zones really worth reducing catches by less than 1 kilo per square kilometre? We would like to also mention the following. A well-planned marine park will be broadly supported, whereas a poorly planned park will cause conflict and divide in the community. Australia already meets its international obligations for marine protection, and also once a marine park is implemented, it is unlikely to ever change, so it is important to get it right. In the 30-plus year history of marine parks in WA, only one 10-year management plan has ever been updated, and even that plan is now expired. Our club is not against marine parks, but after having participated in the planning process, we do not have confidence that local fishing concerns have been adequately considered. We don't really like being told how to manage Esperance waters by people with no vested interest in the area. Given these concerns, we are asking you, our Shire Council, to follow up on a request to the Minister for the Economic and Social Impact Assessment undertaken for Esperance so that you can understand the impact a marine park will have on our town, allowing Council to make an informed decision on the level of support you have for this marine park, along with requesting to retain all shore-based access and only supporting boat fishing restrictions in circumstances where boat fishing can be shown to adversely impact the conservation values of the marine park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Worth, on that presentation. It was very detailed and I compliment you on your presentation. I'd now like to call forward Mr David Gray to speak on behalf of the Esperance Professional Fishermen's Association, I believe on the same subject. Can we just get that microphone up a little bit for David? Yeah, he's got it worked out.
I can do the microphone part. It's the speaking problem. All right. Okay, thank you for having us. I'm from the Esperance Professional Fishermen's Association. And I'm just going to give you a rundown of, oh, you've got our thing up there. We'll give you a rundown of who we are, what we do, and what it means to us in its current state. That's the marine park. So if you click the next. So fishing out of Esperance, they're all family owned and operated small vessels, small businesses. Our catch is all processed locally, all the species that are caught are processed locally, and then they're on sold either locally within WA, interstate, and then some species get exported, which over the last few years has had a downturn due to COVID. A lot of exports didn't happen, but that's the basis of the fisheries. So what's happening out of Esperance now with our multiple small vessels is really it's a model for sustainability. You've got multiple small vessels fishing and spreading their effort over the whole area, whereas the adverse of that is you could have large vessels that are not family owned, they're like a corporate thing, and they go out and they take what they can get, and they take it as much as they can get where they can get it. So right now we're the model for sustainability. I'm sure fisheries would be happy to talk to you about that. So the next slide is what we do in the community. So with employment, we employ skippers, crew and factory staff is the main employment. There's 5 factories in Esperance, which you may not be aware of, 5 fish factories. And there's a lot of things we do behind the scenes that people probably don't know about. It's not broadcast. So rescues, we've actually conducted and been part of a lot of rescues. And just off the top of my head, like we've personally, we've towed 2 vessels off the beach out the front of the yacht club before they got smashed up and had to be craned away. We've retrieved 2 vessels that have flipped over and been upside down. We've righted them and brought them back to shore. Towed in other vessels, we've been towed ourselves by the commercial vessels, because that happens. We've had to run fuel, batteries, all sorts of things out to recreational vessels at night time, a long way out. And these sorts of things, I mean, they may seem small, but if you've got vessels in town that are capable, they've got capable crews, they've got all the equipment to operate at night close to islands, that's an asset. It's an asset for everybody. We even assisted in, when I say we, the commercial industry, even assisted in searching for Darren Mail for up to a week. Research. So with research, the commercial industry actually provides fisheries with a huge amount of its data. So catch, where the catch came from, the size of the catch. And a lot of those figures and data will get sent to fisheries by the fish factories. They'll even send them the frames so they can study them. They can study the ear bones, see how big they are. So all their data, except for the recreational catch, which is given to them voluntarily, is coming from commercial vessels. And a lot of the vessels have even got VMS on them, so they're watching us everywhere we go. They know where we've caught the fish, they know where they came from, so they know what the sustainability level is. We've recently done research with the University of WA and the traditional owners in the Commonwealth marine parks, because they haven't been studied since they put them in, and they weren't studied previously. And this seems to be what's happening again. So they put the park in, and we said, how did that data relate with the baseline data? And they said, what baseline data? So they put a park in, and then they go back a few years to see what's in it. It makes no sense. They've got to have an approach, a very logical approach. What's there? What are you protecting it from? And how's it going? But they didn't do that. And it seems to be the same thing happening here. Our fishers do a lot of sponsorship. So they sponsor seafood, and ice is a big one. Probably the only commercial ice producer in town at the moment is the fishing industry. And they'll, give ice to any club that wants it, basically. So it's fishing clubs and footy clubs and scouts and everything like that. They all come together. Cold storage. With the fishing industry, we've got a huge amount of cold storage, and that once again is an asset to the community. We've had Deep Herd want to freeze wheat there because there was nowhere big enough to freeze their wheat bushels. We've had fisheries chilling white pointers. We've had fisheries storing fish skeletons and picking them up later. Well, all this sort of stuff is free, you know. We've had storage for the freight companies when they break down. We've even had requests during COVID from the nursing home to store pallets of pre-made meals for people coming down with COVID. So none of that's a problem, but we've got the storage, you know. That's something that the community has. I mean, we've even frozen dogs for the vet, you know, because they get it sent up to be cremated and they didn't have enough storage. So then you've got the harbour. So the harbour's quite vibrant with all these people in it. If there's a reduction of ground and a reduction in the fleet, then there's going to be less vessels, less services, like the boat lifters, for instance. I don't think the boat lifters could be there with less vessels. I don't think it would be worth it for them. And then you would have your local industry leaving town to the closest port for the boat lifter, Albany, and then buying all their bits and pieces there, getting all the work done there and driving home. And food, seafood, that's what we produce. It's our main product. We produce that for locals and tourists. And I mean, a tourist coming down here and looking out across the ocean and then going to a restaurant, you'd want to be able to buy some local seafood. Alright, next slide is management. So we're very heavily regulated by management. We've got the best managed fisheries in the world, and that's coming from the government, not us. We feel it's very hard. But there's no open slather fisheries. Every single fisheries is managed by time, weight, or gear. So they're the three tools they usually have to restrict your fishing effort. Even environmental impacts are managed by DPIRD right now, and they have been since fisheries have been around. So they've got every tool they need in the toolbox to shift effort, reduce effort, or stop you altogether, and that's already without a marine path. So an example of that is like rope length for whale entanglements. There's rules about crustacean fishes, how long their ropes have to be while the whales are going through, so that they don't get tangled in it. You're not allowed to take plastic strapping to sea because it can blow off and end up in as a disaster. There's small things like that. There's also fisheries have implemented sea line exclusion zones for demersal gillnet operators. So already the shark fishers can't fish anywhere in the archipelago where the islands are. So they've already been pushed east and west. Now they're putting parks on top of that again, east and west. So then where do they go? In between these little parks. So you're going to have a super concentration of effort there. They've got, like a recent example of management is they went through a wetline review, and this shows how conservative fisheries are and how well it's managed. There was 1,200 licences in the state that could potentially catch fish down here on hook and line, and they reduced that to 54. So there's only 54 licences that could ever potentially catch a fish on a hook and line commercially on the whole south coast. So that's a very conservative move on their part. Go to the next slide. So some of these pressures we've already spoken about, sea line exclusion zones. Fisheries have also implemented sleds. So anyone fishing with a cray pot has to install a sled, which is a device that makes it harder for crayfish to get in, but it stops sea lions being able to fit their head in the neck of a cray pot. So they've already put all these efforts in place, and fishermen are doing this already. We've got some other pressures there, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with COVID. Just everybody, no one has staff. It's the same in our industry. The increasing cost of everything's making it hard. That's very common. The fishing industry is under a lot of stress because of this, but also with the impending park. So we'll probably talk about mental health now. So the commercial fishing industry has been heavily regulated and managed since it's been there by fisheries. And fisheries have done an excellent job. Everybody's following the rules, everybody's doing the right thing, everybody's taking what they're supposed to take, leaving what they're supposed to leave. And then the marine parks come along and they're without proper, let's say, evidence-based research to say, there's something there and this is what we're protecting it from. They haven't done that. But they've said, we're going to put zones in and we're going to stop you fishing. And the stress that that's putting on commercial operators is huge, because they've done everything right and they've been pushed around different zones, different areas, and they're still going to stop you working without evidence, or providing us with evidence. If they have evidence, we'd like to see it, because we're pretty far down the process. Next one. So, once again, we don't have a problem with having marine parks. It's actually, if implemented properly, it's a great idea. If they can identify what is there and what activities you're protecting the things from, it's a great idea. And we're happy to work with evidence-based marine parks. If there's something special there, identify it and act. We've got the most to lose, I'd say, in the commercial industry, because it is our livelihoods. It's everything you work for. It's like a family farm being split up or lost or taken. The consultation process so far, the people that you consult with are very good, but has it been reflected? Have we been heard? Has it been documented? No. The latest round of maps, there's been no changes at all. We had one-on-one meetings with DDCA, with Deep Bird in the room, and the people in the room were excellent, and they understood everything we said, and areas that were important and areas that weren't so important to us. And it's not been reflected at all in the latest round of maps. It's almost as if they shifted a couple and just stamped it off you go. So it's disheartening to see we're at this, there's one CRC meeting left, and we're at this stage where we only just had a meeting with them as a commercial industry. There's one CRC meeting left, and then they're going to come out with a draft management plan. So it's not looking good. Also, another thing that indicates that their data is inadequate is this is just my example of going into a meeting with the planning team, one-on-one meetings. I identified Sandy Hook as an important area for fishing, and so they brought it up on the map, and they put their data up, and they had the whole area as mixed reef, the whole lot. This whole marine park area was mixed reef, and it's just not true, because it's important for purseiner, important for trawling, and when you can't trawl and you can't purseine on a reef, because you wouldn't be here, you'd go broke, because you would rip all your gear up and you wouldn't be there. So we've identified all the areas we fish, and they said, are you sure? Are you sure that's not reef? And I said, yes, I am sure it's not reef. I fish there. And they said, oh, don't know about that. And then that's how it ends. So they've identified this whole area because it's mixed reef, and it's not, it's sand. So we go to the next slide. So I've covered a lot of this already, what it means if it continues the way it's going with the latest round of maps. It's death by 1,000 cuts for the fishing industry, because you'll stay in it. If they're implemented as is on the map today, everyone tries to stay in the fishing industry, but you get pushed out of certain areas. Certain operators are in certain areas, they'll get pushed to the next area, and there'll be a concentration of effort. People generally drop out of the industry, and then one person has to buy another license off another person to stay in it. So you're going to lose a lot of operators, which isn't good. They're all families. It opens the door for having a bit of a interaction with recreational fishers, which we've never had here. We've never had a problem with the commercial recreational industry. Other parts of Western Australia have, but we've never had that down here. And it's a possible effect that if we all get pushed into one area, that everyone get upset. And there's obviously, decrease in employment, drop in seafood. There's always, you can read those ones. Except for maybe the lack of seafood in shops. Like you look at Fish Face restaurant this year, not only did they run out of chips, but they ran out of fish, local fish. And if that's happening now, and that was due partly to the wetline review that I spoke about, but if that's happening now, imagine that with less operators. All right. This is basically about us. We're just basically saying we're not just fishing, we're not out there, open Peninsula, that we're part of the community. We've all got partners and children and people in the community that all play a part. We're here to stay. We're small operators, and we're providing the community with not just seafood, all sorts of things. We have a lot of knowledge and skills that are helpful and can be called upon, and that it's an identity for a lot of the people there. They are fishermen. And lastly, we've got what we'd like the council to do. We'd like to approach the relevant ministers to ensure fishing activities are seriously accounted for in the zoning scheme. Request the scientific research and evidence that underpin the zoning scheme. Request the socio-economic assessment. Raise awareness of the mental health impact on our families. Reinforce the importance of local seafood as part of our community and way of life and tourism.
I take it you're finished, David? David Gray, thank you very, very much for your presentation on behalf of your industry, the Professional Fishermen's Association. Obviously your passion showed through on that presentation, and we certainly take note of the factors that you've raised as being very important in the mind of fishing industry people. So thank you for being with us tonight and making the presentation. I'd now like to call forward the representation from the traditional owners, Doliac. Firstly, Gail Reynolds Adamson, the chair of that organisation, and to David Guilfoyle and Peter Bednall. So, okay, Gail's coming forward and David's going to speak second.
He's the muscle.
Thank you, Gail.
I don't know if I need any muscle there. Thank you, and I'd like to probably acknowledge the previous two speakers in relation to their concerns. Obviously, Esperance Doliac is the native title holder in and around this area. We've actually worked very closely, not closely, but certainly proactively trying to influence and be part of the decision for how it's impacting on sea country. We equally enjoy as much fishing and everything else as everyone else does here, and what we want to do is demonstrate and show you what type of work that we've actually been involved in, so that you get an understanding that our concerns are very much the same as yours. So our team, our corporation and our community, we've worked over the last 18 months, working to try to be part of the process. It's a very difficult and long process, as you can all appreciate, and we equally also have had to lobby hard to be able to be part of it. We've developed some strong cultural plans to show you some of the things that we're involved in, and some of the information that we're going to share with you is how do we become an active participant in the marine park operations, and when that goes ahead, the jobs and training and other processes. I noticed that with the fishing industry, we actively are involved in going out and doing research on their boats and supporting them as well. So we see that as something that we will continue to do in the future. And also, as you are probably aware, we do have a land-based ranger program, and then how do we then, as an entity, look at the ranger program in the sea area, which has been successful in other parts around Australia, and it's something that we can do here in Esperance as well. And part of that is to monitor the impacts and also to study across all the areas, and that's some of the things that we're interested in relation to when the marine parks are determined. What are some of those things that we are going to be involved in looking at the studies and bringing that data to the forefront. Dave has been heavily involved in the joint management part of this, and he'll walk through some of these key things that we're doing, and we've got a bit of a presentation here as well to show you. So Dave, I might hand over to you, and this presentation that you're seeing here today will also be presented tomorrow to the CRC meeting as well.
Thank you for that, Gail. David, it's yours.
Yeah, this document, we were asked as a planning partner to provide a statement and a rationale about the candidate areas that were presented to the CRC. And so that's the background context of this. It's more of a document than a presentation, so I won't go through it all, but just to give you the idea of what it is, and we're happy to share this later. But we've, as a planning partner, have made recommendations about the name. We've done our own planning for a long time with all of our community, and it's a large community to get that sort of voice into a plan, and that's what we're focused on in the plan. So we asked the community through camps and workshops and family meetings, what do you want to do? And that was what comes up as management directives. And from there we broke them up into values and themes. So that's the sort of cornerstone of our plan. What we see now, maps and plans is what we call, like special purpose zones is a zone that you can use as a marine park category. So we've identified 22 discrete zones. We've also got this term which we've called biocultural corridors, so looking at how systems go from land to estuary out to the outer islands. And we're also obviously, as Gail said, really focused on developing a sea country ranger program. And it's a lot about respect and understanding and sharing protocols and science and management. But you can go to the next slide. And that's our map where we're looking at the cultural, the special purpose zones in the orange and those biocultural corridors. And I know it's a bit, what is that? But it's that's what we're trying to explain, and that's what we've been explaining, I guess, through the CRC process for a long time now. And that's what we've got to present to tomorrow. But if you go to the next slide, basically our planning team, we make no recommendations for establishing exclusionary zones within the marine park. So from our planning work, the values and aspirations are about managing, monitoring, research, community empowerment and collective decision making. We have identified special cultural areas because of their connections to heritage and those cultural corridors of the country. And that's sort of how we're applying that to our management plan, so that the areas where we do specific types of management actions or focus of our efforts. There are also special purpose zones of places where we want to work to ensure that traditions are strong and sustainable through monitoring, education, knowledge sharing, rejuvenation and shared community action. We know that we need to know more about sea country and impacts currently facing, where pressures are, and most importantly how communities can best work together to ensure protection. So we're focused on delivering the Marine Park Plan and really keeping it open to collaborative partnerships with the wider community and professional network. So our zoning rationale, which we've been asked to deliver on, is those special purpose zones and biocultural corridors that were presented to the planning partners already. We've also submitted it to the CRC and the SAGs through that large email that went out. So this is everything. We're presenting everything that we've got. And again, it's a strategic plan in terms of how we're going to fulfil our management directives. So again, there's no specific recommendations for sanctuary zones. Beyond that, what's decided by collective decision-making processes that are underway, and we're sort of entitled to act within the CALM Act and those CAR principles and international commitments, but we're looking at consensus-based agreement from the CRC and SAGs with fair consideration to all marine users and all values. So each special purpose zone and biocultural corridor has a set of values, themes and directives related to cultural leadership and management, monitoring, restoration and education. And that's why they're not necessarily linked at all to exclusionary recommendations of use. And we're targeting them in a way that they can be managed by our elders, our cultural advisors, healthy sea country plan coordinators and rangers, and our management team, and our partners, in this region and beyond. And they don't necessarily require regulations via formal zoning. That's because our cultural management processes are holistic, adaptive, community-focused, and action-oriented. We want to take part in active monitoring of sea country across all zoning schemes, how they land, and whichever way they are sanctioned by this process. So it's our cultural plan that will lead our strategic action as marine park joint managers. To give, it's probably beyond this meeting, but what they relate to when you see special purpose zones for cultural reasons, they might have a story associated with them that needs some form of management. They might have a place where we want to do research, specific research on parts of that ecosystem. There's about, nurturing and caring for country is a central value. But there are also places where old people use, and we have cultural areas and sites that people have ongoing connections. So when you community have opportunities to connect with those areas and do cultural practices associated with them. And so the goal is that our associated management plan, where each of our sea country themes can be fulfilled at each place, including the biocultural zones. So why do we need them? Because, but they're implementing our plan, and they're related to specific things, whether it's stories, doing research, education, outreach, and sharing. That's a big value that's come out of our planning. What we call cultural corridors, they're like the old sort of pathways and river systems that connect into islands and things. We're really interested in mapping those, and we've done some work that we're going to show in some videos tomorrow as well about that. And they have a relationship to sort of habitats and things like that. And it's about cultural leadership. We're about applied science and management. We want to unite community through this process, and operators and planners and scientists in a collaborative way. And we want to make it a place in the park that we all love and are proud of. And a real heavy focus, and you probably see us out there doing some of this work, is about our sea country rangers, and we're developing a program to develop that. So we've been instigating projects through, getting funding, grants, and our own sort of networks that are having a really good effect, we think, in this community. And they relate to, cultural seafloor mapping, habitat mapping. We're doing a lot of RUV surveys with the underwater cameras, and have a PhD student that's looking at their research, but that helps give some knowledge exchange to our team. We're also interested in microplastic and oceanic pollution studies and just monitoring that, giving our guys some hands-on technical skills in shipboard safety. We've been doing some good work with fisheries in not compliance, but compliance support, so supporting fisheries compliance officers. Getting heavily into drone mapping now, which is the new and emerging technology that is cutting us all out of a job. But our team are really, picking up on these skills and applying it, and it offers a lot of cost effectiveness to do work. But we're also into art, interpretation, experiences. We want to do festivals about some of the stories and things like that we've done before, but specific to sea country. And I had to chuck archaeology in there because I'm an archaeologist. But looking at submerged landscapes, because we understand it as a flooded coastal plain at the end of the Ice Age, and it's trapped a lot of things. We've had some exciting discoveries that we want to share and celebrate here, that we think are globally significant. And then patrols, sea country patrols, and helping support what everybody's doing for ocean safety. That's it.
Okay. Thank you for that, David, and much appreciated what you put forward to us. Peter, you were on the list. Did you wish to make a comment? No. Okay. Well, thank you to Gail and David and Peter, who would have had a part to play in that presentations. Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, we've had a pretty good session on marine parks today. We had a session with the DPIRB people and some DBCA people involved in that, and now we've had these presentations tonight, and I know that councillors have taken them in, and they really feel privileged to have people in sharing their passion and their issues that are worrying them, I guess, in regards to how this park will be developed and how it will operate within a community such as Esperance. And there's still a lot of decisions to be made. The Shire of Esperance doesn't have a lot of power. We do have the ability to write to the ministers that are involved, and that's certainly one of the options that we might take to, if we've got particular issues that we want to focus in on, we will consider those and look at how we might progress representation for our community. But we're also not just involved with the, I guess, the coastal issues. We are very concerned about the financial impacts of this, and we've heard numbers impressed on us today about what is involved and how important that income is to people and the types of people that do work in, around, on and associated with the sea. So we'll be dealing with that one in due course. So we're going to change the subject a little bit now, and I'm going to call forward Meredith Waters. And do you have someone speaking with you, Meredith? Yeah, no, we'll take the last presentation, and then Councillor Chambers has got a motion for us to put up, I think. So Meredith, welcome along, and Meredith's issue is she's leading Australian Resilient Communities, which is sounds a very, very good project. So I'll hand over to you, Meredith.
Right, we just wanted to start with the clip that has been created by, we all contributed, but Divi and Bagheers put it together. Thank you.
Meredith, before you speak, I missed a point before. I understand that you'd like a photo taken while you're presenting to us, and we're very much pleased to do that, but I'd also just like to advise the rest of those people gathered here that there will be a photo taken. Focusing on you, but some of them might be caught in the background, so I was just letting them know.
No, it doesn't have to focus on me. So I am honoured to stand before you today to present this idea from the Leading Australian Resilient Communities Leadership Program. I know that's a mouthful, but actually the idea of a community charter is, we were asked to come to this program, leadership program, with our ideas already. So establishing a community, a compassionate community in Esperance, maybe establishing is the wrong word, it's actually building what is already in existence. So the idea is to create a charter that would gather us all together and for a compassionate community to work in our community on 3 levels. One, obviously the charter, which is a rallying point for action, and it also works at a community group level, which is where Esperance Care Services comes in, as they've put their hand up to, because they're already being compassionate in our community, to kind of oversee the energising, activating groups around, because essentially resilient communities, what they've found from many researchers is that it's more and stronger connections that is essentially what builds resilience. And so the Compassionate Community Charter is like the head that we talked about, the heart. We have also gathered information not just on a whim. We've looked at the Shire Strategic Plan. We've looked at the Public Health Plan that has embedded already in it what we are kind of on about. And in other communities around the world, so there's in Kansas, there is in Inverclyde in Scotland, there is in Albany, just down the road from us, who've created a Compassionate City Charter that would cite all the positives around building resilience that gathers around that. And then there's the individual level, which Care Services sits with as well, to oversee with individual people wanting to be compassionate if they want to volunteer, or we talked about champions in our community. The actual original compassionate community movement came out of end-of-life care, but as it's grown more and more, it's recognised that anyone who's having a testing time in life, some difficulties, actually could do with a little bit more compassion approach. And so I know it's a big and audacious goal that we're asking, but essentially we are looking to the Shire to endorse the idea of our group continuing to build a compassionate community charter, which would involve engagement with the groups listed in the video that we've already begun to look at. That comes out of a study from Professor Alan Kelleher, and we recognise that it would require funding, but we were looking elsewhere to funding, not to the Shire. And the rest of it would be, if you've got any questions, that we'd be happy to answer. But the essence is, think head, hands and heart is the strategic plan, the toolkit of building compassionate communities is the head, the charter is the heart, and the hands is all of us joining in together to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith, for that presentation and your passion in which you've shared it. And no doubt you're the reigning Esperance Citizen of the Year, and that skills that you have gathered over time obviously has made you want to do more and more for this community. So we really do appreciate that. We'll talk to you more about it and work up where we fit into it and how we can assist and help you to achieve that goal and the goal for everybody in Esperance. So well done, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. The papers that we've handed out should give you the bones of what it's about.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for your little presentation, a screen presentation, a movie, or call it what you want, that we enjoyed leading up to it. Councillors, it's now time to move forward.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Just if I may, at the end of the presentations that we've had, I'd like to move a motion in relation particularly to the first three presentations that we had, and that is that the Council notes the concerns expressed by the recreational and commercial fishing sectors of the potential impacts of the proposed South Coast Marine Parks, and writes to the Premier and relevant government ministers pointing out those concerns.
Okay, so Councillor Flanagan, you...
I feel I might need to declare an impartiality in relation to that question.
Okay, well, I'm just wondering if I can accept it now, or whether I'm best to accept it towards the end of the agenda where there's appropriate point. Mr. CEO, can you advise me?
I think this would be appropriate to accept it here. It's giving me direction on what to do after the presentations.
Okay then, all right, well, I'll accept the motion on that advice. Councillor Chambers has moved it. Do I get a second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Oborne. So you can speak to your motion now and we'll deal with it straight away.
Thank you, Chair. There's been a lot of talk, and I sit on the CRC, so there's been a lot of talk within the community in regards to the South Coast Marine, or the proposed South Coast Marine Park. And I know that there's a lot of concern coming from the professional fishing industry and also from the recreational fishing industry. And I think these concerns need to be taken directly to the ministers. That I know they have been put to the DBCA planning team and to the traditional owner planning team. But I think it's appropriate that because they've come directly to us, that we also follow up on that, and it's what we've been asked to do through those things. So I think it's appropriate that we do it. Further to that, I'd also like to, I suppose, from that point of view, to commend the way that the recreational fishing and the professional fishing groups have conducted themselves throughout this 18-month process. And the other one that I'd really like to commend too is the actual Delarak, the traditional owners of this area. Through this process, they've been extremely professional. I think they've done more research in the area than anyone else has done in the area so far, and I'd like to commend them on that. They've certainly been open, and I know, you know, the information that they've given to us today is really good to have that level of information given to us by the traditional owner group. So I'd like to commend them on their work and also on their presentation, and thank them very much for that.
Thank you. Speaker in favour. Is there a speaker against the motion? I'll give the seconder an opportunity to speak in favour of the motion.
I'd just like to agree with Councillor Chambers' sentiment about supporting our community on this, because there isn't scientific rationale for where these marine parks are going. They're putting the marine park in and then asking for consultation afterwards, and we're hearing a lot of rhetoric and a lot of really good words like, you know, we're considering the cumulative impact, we're considering the economic impact, we're considering the mental health impact, but as has been stated numerous times in presentations, we're hearing the rhetoric, but the plans aren't changing. And so I just hope the ministers and people in Perth making decisions about how we live in our community have the best information available to them on what this means to our community.
Thank you, Councillor Oborne. Is there a speaker against the motion? Speaker in favour? Speaker against or an amendment? I take it there's no further speakers. I'll put the motion to vote. Those in favour, please show. Against, that is carried 8 votes to nil. Thank you, councillors, and that's a very appropriate decision to make, even if I did question on what part of the agenda it's been put in.
That's your role.
We move to item 10 of our agenda, which is the confirmation of the minutes of our ordinary council meeting held on the 28th of February 2023. Is someone prepared to move the confirmation? Moved by Councillor De Haas, seconded by Councillor Horan. It's moved and seconded. But does it need any debate, councillors? No speaker against it?
Would you like me to read it out?
Well, yes, I'm welcome to do that, but it didn't happen. I had a seconder coming. Yeah.
That the minutes of the ordinary council meeting on the 28th of February 2023 and the special council meeting of the 7th of March 2023 be confirmed as true and correct records.
So it's moved by Councillor De Haas and it's seconded by Councillor Horan. Is there anyone wanting to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried 8 votes to nil. Thank you. So then we go to delegates' reports. And you have a list of them there. Firstly, Councillor Oborne, did you wish to make a comment on your list?
Just that the Lost at Sea Memorial Committee meeting the date was changed. So that wasn't attended on that date.
Okay. Right, thank you. So that needs a correction.
Thank you. Nothing further to add, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councillor Flanagan?
No, nothing further to add, Mr. President.
Okay. Councillor O'Donnell?
Thank you, as tabled. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Councillor Graham?
I put in a list that was because I was away at the February meeting, that attains to February, but I included it in my 2-month on my email. Okay, just thank you.
Okay, Councillor De Haas?
I will just add in the meetings from today into next month's.
Thank you. Councillor Horan? Councillor McMullen, there's no report in, and mine are listed there, and there's nothing to add to that. I'd just like to thank all councillors for representing council in those various meetings and assisting wherever possible to make sure that we're connected with the Esperance community. Well done to all of you. Thank you. Let's move on then to item 12 on external services. And the first item is item 12.1.1, development application, oversized building, Amelia Crescent, West Beach. Now, is this the one that Mr. Greaves had a correction to make?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, for the chance to make this clarification. There's just a couple of typos in this report. If you go to page, what I've got is page 13, under officers' comments, paragraph 1, looking at the ridge height of this building in the last sentence being, instead of 4.646 as stated, it is 4.924 metres. And in paragraph 2, where it states that the setback will be 0 to both the rear and the side, it is in fact just 0 to the rear. It will be 150 mil to the side.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions to Mr. Henley or Mr. Greaves in regards to this item? Do you wish to make any comment, Mr. Henley?
Just through the Chair, it's important that the error was made in the report. The details in the background of the report were correct, but the officer's comment was incorrect.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else that you want to say about this item, Mr. Henley?
Through the Chair, there were no objections. It's recommended for approval.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? No? Right, then let's deal with that. The recommendation is on page 14, running into page 15. Is someone prepared to move the motion? Councillor O'Born.
I move the officer's recommendation that council approve development application 10.2023.5192.1 for an oversized outbuilding shed at lot 14630 Amelia Circuit, West Beach, subject to the following conditions 1 through 9 and the following advice notes 1 through 6.
Thank you. It's
1 through 5. My apologies.
just did look a bit like a 6. I was with you. Must be my eyesight and yours equal. So it's moved by Councillor O'Born. Is there seconded to the motion? Councillor Flanagan has seconded the motion. Councillor O'Born, do you wish to speak to this motion?
Yes, this is Mr Henley's monthly oversized development application that he's bringing to the table, and there are no objections from the abutting neighbour. It is a legitimate domestic storage requirement, and that makes it entirely consistent with previous decisions of this nature.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? Seconder wishes to speak to the motion.
Nothing further to add, Mr. President.
Thank you. A speaker against or an amendment? I'll put to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Against, that is carried. It's 8 votes to 0. Councillors, now we move on to the item 12.1.2, the amendment to structure plan Myra Flyen Estate. I've declared a financial interest. I'm leaving the chamber. I hand over to Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Councillor Mickle. So item number 12.1.2, amendment to structure plan of the Myra Flyen Estate. Are there any points you wish to make, Mr. Henley? Or
Through the Chair, nothing further than was added at the agenda briefing session. I take it everyone has read the items. Does anyone wish to move the motion? Councillor Horan.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. Council support the amendment to the structure plan for the Myra
Thank you, Mr. Horan. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor De Haas. Councillor Horan, you can speak to your motion.
Nothing special except they're going to make bigger hangars, which seems to be the trend nowadays. Bigger vehicles, maybe bigger planes, I don't know, but they're going to make more use of the hangars, so makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Do I have a speaker against them? Seconder wish to speak to the motion?
Nothing to add, thank you, Chair.
Do I have a speaker against the motion? Do I have a speaker for the motion? Take it ready, there's no amendments. Take it ready to vote. Those in favour? Those against? That's passed 7-0. Chair Becky. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. The motion, the officer's recommendation was moved.
Thank you. We move on then, councillors, to item 12.1.3, development application carport lot 456 Morton Way, Nelson, and Councillor Haas has declared a financial interest, correct? Any questions you might have to Mr. Henley or Mr. Grieve on this one? No questions? Someone prepared to move the officer's recommendation, which commences on page 24 and rolls over to page 25. So, I've got them everywhere. Oh, yeah, just push the green button. Okay, no, so we can continue on. No, that's good. So we continue on, and so is someone prepared to move the recommendation? Councillor O'Donnell.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation that council approve development application 10.2023.5197.1 for a carport at lot 4564 Morton Way, Nelson, subject to the following conditions 1 through to 10, and the following advice notes 1 through to 6.
Been moved by Councillor O'Donnell. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Oborne. You wish to speak to it, Councillor?
Oh yes, thank you, Mr. President. I need to say that this there was no objections to this this development application. It's an open carport, so there's no visual impact on through to the back of the property. So I see no problem at all with this carport being built, and I urge everybody to support the motion.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? Is the seconder wish to speak to the motion, Councillor?
Nothing
Oborne?
further to add, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against or an amendment? No speakers against, no amendment. I put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Against, that is carried 7 votes to 0.
Thank you.
Call Councillor. Thank you, Councillor De Haas. Just to advise you, Councillor De Haas, that the item that you had declared on has been carried. So let's move on to 12.1.4, development application, oversized outbuilding shed, lot 2755 Askinturn, Bandy Creek. The item is on page 28 of your agenda, and the recommendations are on page 31. Once again, are there any questions to Mr. Henley or Mr. Greaves on this item? If not, someone prepared to move the officer's recommendation on this item? All shy. Councillor Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the officer's recommendation that council approve development application 10.2023.5209.1 for an oversized outbuilding shed at lot 275, bracket 5, Askin Turn, Bandy Creek, subject to the conditions set out 1 through to 9, and the advice notes 1 through to 5.
Thank you. It's moved by councillor Flanagan. Is somebody prepared to second the motion? Seconded by councillor Coburn. So you wish to speak to your motion, councillor Flanagan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Not a lot to say other than this is the obligatory second oversized building application for council to consider. There being no objections and there being a pretty clear rationale in terms of recommending the application, that's why I put forward the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion? Speaker in favour of it? Second? Oh, the speaker, that's right. Is the speaker against it? Or an amendment? No speakers against, no amendment. I put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show. That is carried 8 votes to 0. We go then to page 35 and the review of the trading in public places. Review of public of trading in public places. It's called a policy, isn't it? Yep. Are there any questions you might have to the officer here? Is Mr. Henley or Mr. Grieve? Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one question in regards to the requirement of selling the food 300 metre separation to permanent food businesses. Do the current 2 pods at the Headland count as permanent structures?
Through the chair, they do.
Any other questions? There's no more questions. Councillors, is someone prepared to move the recommendation on this one? Councillor Graham?
Yeah, look, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. The council adopt the proposed trading in places policy as per attachment B.
It's moved by councillor Graham. Is it is there seconded to the motion? Councillor De Haas has seconded. Councillor Graham, you can speak to your motion.
Yeah, look, I think this is a positive move forward, and especially along our foreshore. I've said for a few years ago when I found out about this 300 metre trading from an area like the youth precinct, that it resulted in the youth not being able to be serviced nearby the youth facility, and we've since built a new beach, a new protected beach, which we hope will result in a lot of usage, and I think that part of it particularly enables us to activate those areas and service the locals and the visitors to Esperance. So I encourage this to be voted for those reasons.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? Sorry, I've got a second, haven't I? So, yeah. Councillor De Haas, do you wish to speak in favour?
I'll just say a couple of quick words because I totally agree with what Councillor Graham has said, but I would just like to add that if this encourages more people to take up leases, especially in the headland with coffee shops and things like that, let's go for it.
Thank you. So is there a speaker against the motion? Is there a speaker against or an amendment? Put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show. That is carried 8 votes to 0. We move on to page 60 of the agenda. Item 12.1.6, development application, carport, lot Cabell Close, Castletown. That's a mouthful.
I'd just like to reiterate my partiality interest in this.
Oh yes, It doesn't require partiality, doesn't require you to leave the chamber, councillor. So, are there any questions you might have to Mr. Henley or Mr. Grieve on this item? All the questions were answered last week, so, okay. Someone prepared to move the recommendation, which is on page 63? No? Is there a speaker? Oh, sorry, is there a mover of the motion? Councillors, I'll call for the third time if I don't get a mover. Okay, thank you. Councillor Horan, you've...
Move the offered recommendation. Council approve development application 10.2. Sorry? Wrong page.
Start again.
Offered recommendation that council approve development application 10.2023.5206.1 for carport on lot 23, 5 Cabby Close, Castletown, subject to the following conditions 1 through to 10 and the advice notes 1 through to 6.
Thank you, Councillor Horan. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Flanagan, the second of the motion. Councillor Horan, you can speak to the motion.
Not much really, it's only half a shed, isn't it? It's only a carport, so yeah, not a problem.
Thank you. Is the speaker against the motion? Does the seconder wish to speak, Councillor Flanagan?
I find myself having nothing further to add to that eloquent. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, so is there a speaker against the motion? Speaker in favour? Speaker against or an amendment? No speakers against or no amendment. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Against? That is carried 8 votes to 0. Councillors, we move out of external services and we go into corporate and community services. Local government election 2023. The item's on page 73 and the recommendations on page 75. Are there any questions you might have on this item? They should go to Mrs. Baxter. Oh, he's got it, has he? Right. Oh, Richard's there. Okay, so are there any questions you might have to Mrs. Baxter on this item? Local government elections. No questions? Okay, somebody prepared to move the recommendation and take it forward. Councillor Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the opposite recommendation. Council 1 declare in accordance with section 4.2, subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1995, the electoral commission will be responsible for the conduct of the 2023 ordinary election together with any other election proposals which may be required, and 2, decide in accordance with section 4.61, subsection 2 of the Local Government Act 1995 that methods of conducting the 2023 local government elections will be as a postal election.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Flanagan and seconded by Councillor Oborne. Councillor Flanagan, you may speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I find myself in reading the report and the discussions that have been had through the agenda briefing and other discussions within council, that we're almost in a situation where we can't not have a postal election given the complexity associated with the preferential voting system. I do note that also postal elections inherently have a far higher greater voter turnout, which is to be welcomed, because obviously we all like there to be a far greater community involvement in the election process for local government. But that fundamentally, notwithstanding that it is considerable extra cost to council, given the process that's been put upon local government, we have no other choice. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Is there a speaker against the motion? Second, I wish to speak to it, councillor Oborne.
Yes, to agree with your excellent comments, councillor Flanagan, and to, I guess, really endorse what you're saying about historically it's been proven that a postal vote always results in higher participation from the community in turning out to vote. You know, they get their package, they can read what people are standing for, tick their choices and post it in. It's easy, it's simple, they do it, we're used to it, and I feel personally having such a high turnout gives us a mandate when we get here to make decisions. If only a handful of people vote for you, I know I would not have confidence in being able to do my job. So whatever we need to do to make sure that people are choosing us, to give us confidence to make decisions on their behalf is important. And also it's the Ag Show that weekend. So let's be honest, are they going to come here and vote or are they going to go to the Ag Show? They're going to go to the Ag Show. So we need to do a postal vote.
Thank you, councillor Oborne. Is there a speaker against the motion? Councillors, I'd just like to speak in favour of it. I think the only way we can go on this is with the Electoral Commission. It puts huge loads on our staff to run an election, and there's always concerns from them that they might be, people might try and implicate them in the results that come out, which is totally untrue, but that's what happens. So I think they'll be very pleased if we support this motion, and I think it's the only way to go, as been said by the two previous speakers to me in favour. So I just encourage you to vote in favour of this motion. Is there a speaker against? No speakers against it? No amendments? I'll put to the vote those in favour. Against, that's carried 8 votes to nil. Thank you. We move on then to item 12.3.2, the Financial Services Report, which is on page 80 of your agendas. Any questions to Mrs. Baxter on this item? Well, the CEO occasionally answers questions if needed. Yes, councillor.
Thank you, Mr. President. It was just the question I asked of Miss Baxter last week. I'm just trying to get to the page. It was just about the infringement notice on page 112, and I think she has an answer for me.
Yes, indeed, through you, Chair. The payment of $648 to the Sheriff's Office is in regard to the lodgement of 8 fines of 8 lodgements to the Fines Enforcement Registry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell, and thank you for Mrs. Baxter. Are there any other questions you might have on this item?
Through you, Chair, to address the typos which you raised during the agenda briefing, I'd like to amend those typos on pages 84 and 88 of the agenda, or pages 2 and 6 of the report. I can give that detail. It was just a $1 rounding typo on page 2, and on page 6 it was the inclusion of the negative brackets and removal of decimal.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Baxter. Everybody's familiar with those? Okay.
So to update the resolution as amended, please. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, well that's still to be made. Any other questions you might have to Mrs. Baxter? If not, is someone prepared to move the motion and the words as amended? Because we have sorted out those couple of typos. Is someone prepared to move? Councillor O'Donnell.
I move the officer's recommendation that council receive the attached report entitled Monthly Financial Services Report incorporating the statement of financial activity from the month of February 2023 as amended.
Thank you. Moved by councillor O'Donnell. Is it seconded? Seconded by councillor De Haas. Councillor O'Donnell, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, is the speaker against the motion? Councillor De Haas, do you wish to speak to them?
No, thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, so it's no speakers in the debate. Is there a speaker against or an amendment? I put to the vote those in favour. Against, that is carried. 8 votes to nil. Councillors, now we move on to the item 12.3.3, the HR staff entitlement policy amendment, which is on page 127 of your agenda, a recommendation on 128, and our 2 senior staff members have left, having declared financial interests. Are there any questions you might have to Mr. Greaves or Mr. Walker on this item? Any questions to Mr. Walker? He's all keen for one. You want to move the motion, do you?
No, I didn't get the opportunity to ask this last week. Page 127 of the agenda, in the officer's comment, says the analysis determined that $100 back in 2010 is the equivalent of $148.71 today, and therefore a 50% increase would be suitable, increasing the housing allowance to $200. So I guess I was just trying to understand the rationale for that, because if 100 is equal to 148, wouldn't the increase be 25% needed to match what's needed? But we're asking for 50%.
Through the chair, probably don't agree with the officer's comment as such. What they have done is looked at what $125 was back in 10 years or over 10 years ago, and then that value purchased in today's value for offsetting rent. So that's where they've come up with the $100 or $200 per week subsidy for the first 6 months. So just trying to, I guess, give some justification around why it's gone up quite a significant amount of money.
I guess what my question though was, Mr. President, is the justification is that we need $148, so we're going to give them $200. So what's the extra $52 for?
So through the chair, the $100 actually doesn't relate to anything. I think they're just trying to demonstrate that prices are gone up significantly, like 50%. The original staff housing subsidy for the first 6 months was $125 per week.
Okay.
And they're recommending that that goes up to $200 per week.
So this is an example rather than the exact figure.
That's right.
Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you.
That's right. Okay, so any other questions that you might have? Thank you for that, Mr. Walker. Is someone prepared to move the motion? Councillor Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to move the officer's recommendation that the council endorses the staff entitlement policy, inclusive of amendments, inclusions and deletions as reviewed.
It's been moved by Councillor Flanagan. Is there a seconded? Seconded by Councillor Horan. With respect to your motion, Councillor Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Notwithstanding the kind of uncertainty in terms of what was actually set out in the officer's comment, I just also note that the staff entitlements also seek to alter the level of entitlement for casual staff at the Bar Bowls Leisure Centre to access gym facility or the recreational facilities as well. The premise on which the report and the policy change is recommended is that it's a better recompense or more fair recompense in relation to housing allowance and relocation, and I think we need to, as a council, do all we can to ensure that we can attract the best possible people. So I recommend that councillors support this recommendation on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. There's the seconder of the motion. I should ask, is there a speaker against the motion? Does the seconder wish to speak to the motion?
I think Councillor Flanagan covered everything I was going to say. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion? Speaker in favour? Councillors, I just speaker in favour of it. I think we've took through this program, we've tidied a few things up. As Councillor Flanagan pointed out, the inequity of part-time staff who were part-time, full-time, part-time, and what we had as full-time having access to the recreation. It was essential. It's essential that we find we meet the market actually with what we pay along the line, and so there's an adjustment there, and a significant one. And certainly we know all of our costs have gone up. Many of them are the costs that we have to pay are significantly greater than the CPI that we hear mentioned on our radios and etc. And we only see that when we have looking to relocate people. There's no way in the world that we can get a person's goods shifted into our community from, the Perth areas or something like that for less than $8,500. It has just gone through the roof, a lot of those costs. So we're just meeting the market by this decision. So I encourage you to support the motion. Is there a speaker against or an amendment? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Against, that is carried. Okay, so we move on to the let them back in. That's right. Thank you. Gentlemen, the motion was carried. Mrs. Baxter and Mr. Burge. We go to executive services. Item 12.4.1, the Common Seal usage, 20th of October 2022 to February 2023, which is just a reporting process to you. The item is on page 143. The recommendation is on page 144 of your agenda. Are there any questions to Mr. Burge or to Mr. Burge? He's the one that we got asked here. Any questions to Mr. Burge? Just a reporting process. Is someone prepared to move the officer's recommendation? Moved by Councillor Graham.
Yeah, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation that council receive the report titled The Shire of Esperance Common Seal Usage for the period of October 22 to February 2023.
Thank you. Moved Councillor Graham. Is it seconded to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Chambers. Councillor Graham, you can speak to your motion.
Yeah, as been said, this is a tick-off for the use of our common seal, and I don't mind moving this one every year, every 6 months or every year, because that means we're selling land and bringing money in, and I think the CEO's excelled himself the last 6 months on that process, and I even noticed that he's bought a couple of lots as well. So, so well done, Mr. CEO.
Okay. Mr. Speaker in favour. Is there a speaker against the motion? The seconder would like to speak to the motion.
Nothing further to add. Sure.
Is there a speaker against the motion? I'd just like to speak in favour. I think with tongue in cheek that I'm getting RSI signing all the documents in regards to this, but it's as pointed out, there's been a lot of activity that requires the common seal attached to it. So I'd encourage you to support it, councillors. Is there any speakers against or an amendment? I put to the vote those in favour. Against, that is carried. We go to the information bulletin, item 12.4.2 on page 147 of your agenda, and there is the recommendations on page 147. Any questions on this to Mr. Burge? Councillor Chambers.
Yeah, I'll just scroll through to the page where I made a note. towards the end of it now. It was just in regards to, there it is there, page 176, the item 13.1.2, which is fund a tourism development manager, a 4-year contract in partnership with Australian Golden Outback. The comments in there still read that the agreement with AGO is in place. The tourism development manager has been appointed and has been operating for the past 6 months.
We'll
Take
get
it that
we'll
he's
get
been
that
there for
updated.
quite some time. It'd be great to see that updated. Thank you.
Okay, it's got to be updated. Any other questions on these reports, councillors, that you'd like to put to the CO? If there's no questions, then we have some recommendations. Someone prepared to move the officer's recommendation on page 147? Councillor Chambers?
Move the officer's recommendation. I'll move the officer's recommendation that council accepts 1, information bulletin, March 2023, 2, council priority summary, corporate performance, February 2023, 3, the delegation's discharge, corporate resources, 4, community grants program 2022-2023, small grants, February 2022, and 5, the letter advising CEO of ministerial approval on the 3rd of March 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Is there a seconder? Seconder, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Chambers?
Nothing to add other than that this continues to be one of the best forms of information about what is happening within the council and where we're at against both the community's strategic plan, the council plan as we now know it, and other operations within the council.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against? Seconder wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I concur with Councillor Chambers. I really enjoy going online and looking at all the graphs and things like that. So thank you to the staff for continuing to put these on for our enjoyment. And I hope everybody votes in favour of this.
Is there a speaker against? Seconder wish to speak to it?
Yep, I did speak.
I just spoke to it, didn't I? Apologies. So the seconder, is there a speaker against? I'll put it to the vote. Councillors, those in favour, please show. So it's carried 8 votes to 0. We go now to page 184 of your agenda, and we get to the item of minutes of committees. So the minutes of the committees. This is CO review systems. This goes a bit. Yeah, we've got to work through these. The council accept following and unconfirmed. Rightio, that's it. So councillors, item 13.1 is the minutes of the committees, and the recommendation there is that council accept the following unconfirmed minutes. Item 1 of that is Audit Committee meeting 7th of March. Is someone, are there any questions you might have to Mr. Burge on this item? Okay, so this is adopting the minutes of the committee, which you have as information for your information there on the page 185. So is someone prepared to move the recommendation 13.1? Councillor Flanagan has moved.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the council accept the following unconfirmed minutes. 1 minute Audit Committee meeting 7th of March 2023.
Thank you. Is there a seconder to the motion? Seconder, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really don't need to outline too much here because a lot of the content of that meeting will be set out and discussed and decisions made with the following three items on this agenda item. Thank you.
Is the speaker against? Seconder wish to speak? Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, it was an enjoyable meeting going through these items. I'd just like to read to you one of the comments that were made in the report, and I find this a positive comment that I'd like everybody to hear. And it states, the Shire appears to operate to a high level of competence and compliance, and this is because of its highly experienced employees. Thank you.
Thank you. The speaker against? Or an amendment? Put to the vote. Those in favour? Against? That's carried 8 votes to nil. We now go on to 13.2, which is on page 314 of your agendas, councillors. As you can see, that audit report was a very big document. So we go 314. That's the one. Any questions on this item, which is the CEO's review of systems and procedures regulation 17 of the Local Government Act? Do you have any questions for the CEO on this item? There you go. Any questions to Mr. Burge? No questions to Mr. Burge? Somebody prepared to move the recommendation on item 13.2? Councillor Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee's recommendation that Council, 1, accept the CEO's review of the appropriateness and effectiveness of the Shire of Ashburn systems and procedures in relation to risk management, internal control and legislative compliance, and 2, request the Chief Executive Officer provide the Audit Committee with a prioritised list of actions based on recommendations of the report provided by Civic Legal.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Flanagan. Is there a seconder? Seconder, Councillor O'Donnell. You wish to speak? Councillor Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just probably, as was outlined at the agenda briefing, it was extraordinarily comprehensive review of council systems, risks, internal controls and so forth. One of the things that it did recommend is a number of prescriptive and documented procedures and controls just to ensure that there is actually continuity in terms of decision making if there's a transition of senior staff through the organisation, so it provides for that. The other thing is that in the discussion within the Audit Committee, it was considered appropriate that we actually close the loop, so that notwithstanding that there were a series of recommendations made, that we actually had an understanding, clarity in terms of how those recommendations were actually going to be dealt with by officers, hence the second part of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the seconder wish to, is the speaker against? Seconder wish to speak on this item? Okay. Speaker against? Councillors, I'll just speak in favour. This just to point out the fact that the CEO has had this work done by independent organisation who are skilled, very skilled in this area, believing it was appropriate to get someone in periodically, not necessarily every year, but get somebody in to actually do this work, and the report come up extremely well as I see it. And as Councillor Flanagan said, there's a few issues that we will basically fine-tune to make sure that they're all done. Is there a speaker against on amendment? I'll put to the vote those in favour. Against, that is carried. 8 votes to nil. Now we go to item 13.4, which is the budget review, which is on page 340. So I missed 3.3, compliance audit report, and that is on, this item's on page 344. That's it. 344. Are there any questions you might have to the CEO on this one? Any questions? No questions? Somebody prepared to move? The compliance audit report. Councillor Graham?
Yep, that the committee recommendation that council adopt 2022 Shire Investments Compliance Audit Return pursuant to Regulation 14-3 of the Local Government Audit Regulations of 1996.
Moved by Councillor Graham. Is it seconded? Second by Councillor Flanagan. Councillor Graham, you speak to it.
Yeah, no, just a very short recommendation for a lot of work. I would suggest, so thanks for those that meet the compliance requirements for this. Thank you.
Is there a speaker against? The seconder wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. President. Only to add that notwithstanding the amount of work involved, actually demonstrates that the systems are working, that our council officers are extraordinarily diligent in ensuring that we're actually fully compliant as a local government. And just to congratulate them, because the only thing they could manage to turn up, I think it was self-reported, was not putting an address in on a job advert.
Yes.
And so that speaks volumes of the professionalism of our staff, and I'd like to congratulate the CEO and officers in relation to that. Thank you.
Thank you. And speaker against? I would speak in favour. I'd just like to endorse what Councillor Flanagan said. It's obviously this work is done back of office, and we are very, very fortunate to have a staff member like Sarah that can do this work. She has done it for many years, and it's basically part of whole of the year work. And so, yeah, I think it's a fantastic job and result for what to me was just a horrible document to have to read right through of, but also the fact that she had all the answers and we only slipped up on one thing and it was done so thoroughly. So well done. Pass it on. Is there any other of us want to enter the debate or against? Put to the vote those in favour. Against, that is carried 8 votes to nil. And so we go then to motions of which notice has been given.
No, budget review. 13.4, budget review.
Oh, I'm in this. Page 370, councillors. It's the budget review. This is an interesting one too. You'll want to talk about this one, discuss this one. Councillors, the budget review, which is part of the items that the audit committee went through, and it's reporting back to you as the council. This item is on page 370, item 13.4. And any questions to Mrs. Baxter or the CEO? Okay, no questions. Is someone prepared to move the recommendation, which is on page 375. Are there any questions? No questions. Somebody like to move the motion? Councillor Flanagan again. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move the committee recommendation that Council 1 adopt the 2022-23 budget review, and 2 approves the budget amendment to accept a $200,000 grant from the Department of Transport and associated expenditure as set out in the table contained in the recommendation. Thank you.
Is there a seconder to the motion? Seconder, Councillor Chambers. Councillor Flanagan, you can talk to it.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's always a good thing when we have a budget review that sets out that we have a reduction in the forecast deficit. So that's a good thing. Noting that the reduction has been, there's been significant variances in relation to a number of items that relate to just cost escalation, which seems to be the standard operating procedure in the world we live in at the moment, offset by how would I characterise it? But essentially, a cash inflow from sale of land and a few other things as well. One of the things that have been discussed, we said within committee and at the agenda briefing, was just the need to ensure that the ongoing core finances around recurrent operation of the council needs to be diligently taken care of outside the anomalies that might exist in terms of some of the transactions that have been set out in the report. But I think it's a very, very good outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a speaker against? No speakers against. A second who wish to speak, Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to agree with Councillor Flanagan. It just shows that the Shire is not exempt from any of the other pressures that are happening outside the rest of the in the rest of the environment in the world. There's certainly been extensive increases in costs, which we have seen, and as Councillor Flanagan indicated, need to be taken into account during the next budget process. But there's also been some very good income as well, and I think it's been managed extremely well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. A speaker against? Speaker in favour? Speaker against or an amendment? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Against? That is carried. That was by an absolute majority. 8 votes to 0. And that concludes the those items on that agenda. So we now go to item 14 of our agenda, is the motions of which notice has been given. Do we have any of those, Mr. CEO? Members' questions with or without notice? Nil. We go then to urgent business approved by decision. Any urgent business? Then we move on to matters behind closed doors. Item 17, which is someone prepared to move that we go behind closed doors to deal with this item? Okay. No, my apology. So we go behind closed doors. We could offer a public question time, but I don't know whether there's any of those left. So, Mr. Vivian, thank you for sitting through a very long evening. But do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
No, I'm honoured to be considered that.
Thank you, Mr. Vivian. My apologies for not acknowledging you personally when you at the beginning of the meeting. So.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, councillors, we've got to. Yeah. Who moved?
I did.
Councillor O'Donnell.
O'Donnell moved. Councillor Graham seconded that we go behind closed doors. I put it to the vote. Those in favour? That is carried. 8 votes to 0. So close the doors, please. Now. Yes. Yeah. Well, I haven't quite got there yet, but we'll shut the doors, please. Emily's coming back, right out. Okay. She was probably letting Jeff out. Thank you, Emily. Well, we're not on. We're not live streaming now, are we? For this, we're behind closed doors. Just give them a bit more time to Stop the live stream. councillors, senior staff members, members of our secretarial team that keep things happening. Thank you for your great work tonight, and we worked through a very big agenda. No doubt we have received a lot of information during what did we? Yeah, deputations that came forward, and I was overawed by the passion of the people that presented to us. They had their facts and their detail there, and they were very, very keen to give us the information. I just also advise those that are watching this through live streaming that council has, behind closed doors, agreed to purchase a house in Treasure Road, Sinclair, and that is to be used for future staff housing. Thank you to everyone that's been with us, both in the chambers and live streaming, and I'll declare the meeting closed.